Great. Hi, everyone. It's always great to be talking at EMF. I was here last event talking about driving science across the ocean in an unmanned ship, and I'm here talking about tennis. So as you can imagine, I have quite a varied day job. I work for IBM in IBM Research, where we get to play with sort of all kinds of bits of new tech and implement that in all kinds of areas around the world and in every industry. So this is where I work. It's Hursley, great country house out in Hampshire. If you're interested in working in cool tech and maybe live nearby, that's always a good place to check out. Also building stuff with LEDs in my personal time, because why not? That's probably what everyone does here anyway. So I'm here to talk to you about the tech behind the tennis. Wimbledon is something that pretty much everyone here probably knows and watches at some point during their lives. You either go there and watch it in person, or maybe you only stick it on the TV when Wimbledon's on, because I think that's quite common for most people in the UK. Wimbledon's one of the interesting Grand Slam tennis tournaments, because if you sort of survey all the people that go there, there's actually a fairly big proportion who don't watch tennis regularly. They go to Wimbledon just to go to Wimbledon because it's the experience. But what none of these people, whether they go there to see the tennis, to see the gardens and get the strawberries and cream, or whether you watch it on TV, is you might not appreciate the amount of hard work and effort and the amount of technology that underpins a Grand Slam tennis tournament like this. Over the last 30 to 40 years, every tennis tournament around the world has been doing huge amounts of work to improve the experience for players and viewers alike. And this is sort of going to hopefully show you a little bit of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes. So I'm going to start right at the bottom, the grass, which might sound incredibly low tech, but actually it is a fairly intensive and technologically advanced process. The grass at Wimbledon, perennial ryegrass, it's actually treated like a crop. The grounds team who work there are basically working, as if they were farmers. They try and grow the perfect grass for all of those courts every single year. And what makes it even harder is that at the end of the championships, all, if not most, of the courts have the grass completely ripped up and killed, because it basically, for the 2 weeks of the tournament, it's kept in almost a perpetual state of half alive, half dead, because that's what gives it the best finish for playing tennis. And keeping it in that state for 2 weeks, you then end up with grass that's not very good afterwards. So it gets ripped up, taken away, which means you then have to grow an entirely new tennis court from scratch in 12 months. So over the years, that probably wouldn't have been too much of an issue, but at Wimbledon, centre and number one court, which are sort of around a whole string of courts down the middle, which you can see here, they have grown in height as they've had roofs added, which has been fantastic for watching tennis, but not great for natural sunlight in the early seasons of the year, which means the courts don't get all the sunlight they need, which means the grass doesn't grow as fast. So answer here is you get these nice big grow lights that you might see on a football pitch or a cricket pitch, but you don't want to run those all the time, because you might not need to. Grass can only absorb so much sunlight, so you want to optimize how much those lights are on and off during the sort of the early winter months. So they now have light sensors specifically tuned for photosynthesizable light on those courts to try and optimize when those lights are on and off to save energy, reduce light pollution, and all that good stuff. They've also got a great amount of work going on to reclaim water for the irrigation system, which keeps the courts nice and healthy during the summer months. I'm going to go really fast through all of this because I've only got 30 minutes, so if you want to know any more, I'll be in the QA tent afterwards. Working up from the grass ever so slightly, we've got the lines on the grass. So if anyone's watched a match and you've seen this come up on the screen, Hawkeye, this is seeing whether the ball was in or out when the players were playing their point. This is a really complex operation, because you've got a whole array of cameras, like these ones, around the court that are tracking not just the balls, but the players in three-dimensional space. So they know when the ball hits the line, and they can say whether it's in and out, but we're actually gathering even more information than that. We know where the players are, we know how their arms are swinging, we get skeletal feed data from them as well. We're effectively running motion capture on a tennis match. So we can not just tell, was the ball in or out, we can say how many kilometers did Andy Murray run for that entire match, which I think is pretty cool. This shot I love here is them calibrating those cameras. You'll either see tennis balls dotted around the court or a load of CDs upside down, and that's them making sure that all the cameras around the court are all aligned and looking at the same place correctly. A little bit further up from that now, we've got the net sensors. So if you've been listening carefully and you see a player serve and you hear a little beep, they probably hit the net, and this is what gets it. They have two little sensors on the net, and they send a wireless signal up to the umpire who's sitting in his chair to know exactly was that line hit, was the net hit or not, because there's a lot of in very quiet please on the court. You want to make sure that it definitely was hit for that point. So yeah, we've got those little sensors on the net. Really simple, but still, it's technology. It makes the event work. Right, now, broadcast. If you've watched it on TV, there is a lot going on behind this. It used to be all run sort of by the BBC for a very, very long time. And then a couple of years ago, Wimbledon went, actually, we're going to sort of manage this ourselves and create something called WBS, Wimbledon Broadcast Services. So everything from the footage on the courts up to the broadcasters around the world is all managed by WBS, and then the broadcasters will tend to put their bit on top. So you might have sort of Sue Barker back in the day would have been doing it, Claire Balding now doing those interviews. They come on top of that, but all of the actual match footage is done by Wimbledon. So you've got camera operators all over the court. I could not give you an estimate on the number of cameras probably on site. It's ridiculous. The number of miles of cable going from every single tennis court back to the broadcast centre as well is absolutely insane. It used to be you just get centre 1, 2, 3, 12 and 18. I know those off by heart now. Those were the show courts where you would see the sort of fairly big matches. Now every single court is televised. So even if you're trying to watch a fairly low-ranked player from that maybe not many people are interested in, there will still be video footage of that can go back to, say, their home country if people are interested. The broadcast centre is massive. It used to be just a load of containers and some broadcast trucks, but it's now a whole complex sort of just underneath some of the courts at the end. As I said, they are managing every single court around the site, plus a load of other cameras that give you beauty shots, interviews to players, the club managers, some of those as well. So that's all got to come through one place, gets edited by directors, like the guy sitting behind me, and then it goes back out to every single television company that could possibly want it. As you can see, there's all of those different companies and broadcasters there. There's probably more as well. They can actually have a room in the broadcast centre where they will do their talks from, their interviews from. So when you're watching, say, the BBC, and you can see behind Claire Balding, you've got this lovely scenery behind her. That's all real. It's a lovely curved window that they're sitting in front of, and there's about maybe 10, 15 studios like that different countries' broadcasters can all have. Sorry, talking very fast. Behind me here is the dolly cam. This is one of the beauty cams they have at Wimbledon that was added a couple of years ago. Basically, two massive towers and some very tight ropes strung between them. It looks awesome, footage-wise, and it also is quite fun to watch them putting it up every morning. So you might see that. Now, the one that's on the top here, with the green screen, that's interesting. Pay attention to that. This is one of the interview rooms. It doesn't look very interesting with green screen, but this was what they did for last year, which was creating a fully virtual environment to effectively superimpose the interviewer interviewee into. This kind of looks like the roof of the broadcast centre, but we don't have a pond, definitely, or the quite all of the wildlife up there. But I just thought this was really cool because it lets them, in theory, they can have one single room that they can do interviews in. That environment's all ready to go, but they can change what it looks like year on year if they want to. They can change the shots and how all of that's sort of superimposed together. Just a really cool sort of implementation of sort of technology that, you don't need it for tennis, but it does help. It helps sort of bring people into what Wimbledon looks like. This is a very sort of exaggerated look of Wimbledon, but it looks great. You want to go there. You want to see the flowers and the tennis courts, which I think is great. Crane cam as well. Crane cam's had a bit of an upgrade over the last few years too. You will have probably, if you've watched it, you'll have got the great shots looking over the whole of Wimbledon, down all the courts. That used to be, I kid you not, there was a guy who had to sit in a crow's nest that would get put up there in the crane, and he would go up there for, I don't know how many hours his shift was, but he'd be up there with a thermos for a long time, and he was there managing the camera, pointing it at whatever they thought was interesting, whatever he was told to do. You definitely definitely need a head for height, and if you needed a break or something, they had to bring the whole crane down again. So again, it's been upgraded, all fully robotic. They can sit in the nice comfort of one of the basements of the broadcast centre where it's warm and there's coffee, and they can control everything from here, which is great, and it means you get great shots like this, which I think is always very nice. You tend to get them whenever it's raining and they've had to pause the tennis, and so that's when they go, oh, let's show you something else. In this case, lots of closed courts. Whilst we're on the rain and closed courts, the roofs. Centre Court's had its roof for a while now. Number one court got its roof a few years back. Hugely complex engineering was required to prepare the courts to have that kind of weight put on top of them, and then to operate the roofs as well, because you've got to make sure that all of the different segments go together correctly in the right order and at the right speed. And then once it's all closed, that's not just it. If you've been at Wimbledon and this has happened, you'll be sitting there going, well, they've closed the roof, why is the tennis not started? And that's because they then have to get the air conditioning going to make sure that the entire stadium is at the right humidity and temperature, because what you don't want is water condensing on the grass, making it slippery for the players, which can be a big issue. So, and also, if it started raining and then they closed the roof, then there could be some water on the court too, so you've got to let that dry out a little bit. You'll usually see the head referee sort of walking onto the grass and touching it in a few places and getting a few cheers from the crowd. But how do they know if it's raining? Well, this is a hugely important and quite complex piece of technology. It is a baking tray on the roof filled with water and a camera pointing at it. It is very important though, and this is actually run by Météo France. So Wimbledon hire in, or they bring in, not just the Met Office, but the French version of the Met Office as well. They have both there, and they're looking at radar maps to track the rain coming in across Wimbledon, because they need to know how much time have we got before the next bit of rain comes, so that we can get as much tennis in as possible. And then also, when's the rain going to stop? Because we really want to get the tennis done. There's a huge amount of matches to get through in those 2 weeks that we have. So optimizing when courts are open and closed due to the rain is really, really important. So you have a lot of people in there all looking at this. It's really weird. When you're working at Wimbledon, it's a fairly big site, but you can be on one end of the site and it is glorious sunshine and nice and dry, and then you hear on the radio, oh, they're closing number one court because of rain. And it will take a minute or two before the rain eventually gets down, and they'll keep those courts open until the rain starts, because you just want to eat as much of those matches out as possible. There is a rubber duck. That was I put that up there as a joke, thinking no one would see it, and then that ended up on the BBC last year. They nicknamed him John Quackenroe, which I wish I could take credit for, but I can't. The purpose of the baking tray, though, is that if it's filled with water, it's very difficult to see. If it's already been raining during the day, you don't know how big the raindrops are. Is it just a drizzle? Is it a tiny bit? Is it very sort of sporadic? Or is it really heavy pelting rain? And when you're watching a baking tray of water, you can see the ripples as each raindrop hits it, so you know how hard and heavy that rain is. So sometimes you might go, it's fine, we'll leave the courts uncovered for a few minutes, it'll pass. Or you'll go, oh no, heck, that thing's like a sort of a jacuzzi in there, we should shut the courts now and put the covers on. So that's sort of what that baking tray's for. So it actually serves a very important role. They also have a fairly, I think, quite a nice sort of bit of a legacy system to tell when to cover the courts. There are 7 segment displays dotted around the court, the whole site, hidden. If you look up on some of the buildings where there's lots of ivy, you'll see a tiny little number, and those different numbers mean different things to the court coverers. There's sort of things like, it's fine, it's nice and sunny, don't worry, just chill, or it's about to rain, be ready to take on the covers, or get it on now. And so they'll be watching those little numbers and the 7 segment displays as they change, and that's all controlled from the referee's office, which I think is quite nice. Audio. There are many different things that you need audio for at Wimbledon, and that could be from the sound of the tennis, so you hear the players, balls going across. You want to hear the umpire to know what he's or she's saying. You want to hear the players sometimes when they're sat in their chairs having a little natter. And if someone wins or loses, they now do interviews at the end of all the matches. Plus, there's a whole number of other things they need audio for. You've got the announcements during the day. You've got safety announcements, which are very important. There's music playing in some places. There's a brass band that occasionally turns up and plays on the tee lawn. All of these things need audio. And so there is a really complex operation that goes on to make sure that for every single audio source around Wimbledon, that can get back out to the right places. And that's I think, quite clever because you've got amplifiers and speakers all over site. Amplifiers tend to be relatively close to the speakers. But if you wanted, you could route the audio from one place to, not on the court that it needs to be on, but you could send it somewhere completely different, which you might have a need to do. You've also got comms panels, so huge amount of necessity almost, a bit like here we've got our decked phones. At Wimbledon we've got comms panels so that teams can talk to each other for all manner of reasons, whether it's from the director to the commentator sitting in the commentary booths, or in my case, because I work for IBM, so we might need to talk to our data entry teams, which we'll get to in a minute, or we might need to talk to the comms team to ask for help as well. So they can route all of those different comms panels together, and we can also get things like we could get the audio from a tennis court routed through to a comms panel. So you can be sat on a particular position, watching one thing, listening to another, if that's what you really want to do. I think it's pretty cool how they've managed to sort of network all of that together. Displays. So there are, again, a huge amount of LED displays around Wimbledon. You've got the big TV, which you can see here on the hill. It used to just show one court. It's now, because it's gone widescreen, they can show two matches at the same time, which I don't know how you would pay attention to one or the other, but they do manage that. They're also augmenting in things like the scores. They also have sidebars that can come up, so you can be watching, maybe it's a really important match on centre, but you can also have the summary of what's going on the other courts. You can have the schedule appearing. You can have all kinds of content pushed by the social media and digital team as well. So it's not just watching a match, it's bringing a whole experience for everybody who's sitting on the hill, because some people will just come to Wimbledon to sit on the hill. You get a ground pass and that's what you want. The teams that do the LED displays do an absolutely great job, and they've got a fantastic eye for detail. You will see them wandering around the site early in the morning before anyone started, and they will check that every single one of the LED modular panels are okay. If there's a single pixel that's broken, it comes out, they swap it out. If the sort of enclosure's been dented or scraped, they will come out with a can of spray paint. Wimbledon has their own green, by the way. There's a specific Wimbledon green paint. If you want to put anything stationary at Wimbledon, you need to have that colour paint. If you want it to move, it probably needs to be white. It's the players in their white clothes. But yeah, again, all of the displays can be controlled from positions all around the site, and you can drive almost any content you want to them. But typically, every screen serves an important purpose. The TV has its stuff, the scoreboards have theirs, speed of serve displays. We also have some more general displays around the site, which will show things from the schedule to the scores on a court to just general announcements like, make sure you put on some sunscreen because the UV index is really high at the moment. Talking of the sun, we are slowly seeing more and more solar panels turning up at Wimbledon. The site is in a continuous state of change. Between every year that they are playing tennis, there is something being built or renovated or improved, and almost every single one of those projects, there is an important part of that, which is to make the buildings more energy efficient, waste less water, generate their own electricity. And in this case, it's a nice sort of trifecta. You've got solar panels, you've got a living roof, and you've got a bug hotel, which they've built on top of the new media centre, which I think is quite nice. So, yeah, generally, any opportunity they get, they're always trying to bring in whatever the next sort of eco-efficiency sort of improvements they can to the site. So, as I mentioned, I work for IBM. IBM is the official IT partner to Wimbledon. We've been working together for 34 years now, since 1990. It started off very differently. There was barely any technology at Wimbledon, just about, there were TV cameras, and that was kind of about it. We came in to be the official sort of data collector. So, what we have is on every single court, we have our data entry statisticians. These are county-level tennis players, so they're really good young tennis players. They really know the sport inside and out, and we train them for a good amount of time to use our data collection software, which lets them collect quite a decent amount of information per match. It depends what court they're on. Some courts we do speed of serve as well. Other courts we don't, so the outside courts. But you'll get things like, what was the rally count? Where did the ball land? Was it an ace? Was it a winner? Double faults? All that kind of stuff is collected by these folks, and they're always really, really attention to detail. They're constantly watching the match, and in some cases we've got in this picture, you can see there's 2 of them. So it's not just one person watching. On some courts, it's 2 people. So there's literally a person there just to confirm, is what we're seeing correct, and is what we put down correct. On other courts, we've got 3 people. So we've got one person doing sort of one statistics, another person managing the speed of serve, and we've got a third person, so we've got quorum between all 3, just to make sure that whatever we're putting down is correct, because we need to make sure it's in the system within seconds of the point being won, so that everything else, which I'll get to in a second, can be updated. We also have, and you see them behind me, in our control room, the ability to go in and take over any match. So if we lost network, say a cable got eaten through, or something happened, say a swarm of bees made their home next to one of our statisticians, which happened a few years ago, we can immediately take over down here. Again, we can run the video from any camera on any court, so we don't just get what the sort of general public sees, we get any camera view we want down here, and we can start taking over and statting the match, which is really important for sort of just disaster recovery, keeping things going, and all that. We had an interesting event last year because of the rain, actually. For the first time ever, it rained so much that we actually had to open up the practice courts to run some championship matches. This was the boys under 14 event, which was new for that year, so it probably didn't, sort of a combination of things happened. But in this case, we had to basically go from bare tennis courts that were just being used for practice to getting them fully set up for an umpire to run the match, to our statisticians being able to stat the match, so that all of that data could go out to all of the people we provide it to. Who do we provide it to? We've got the TV companies with the TV graphics that you see, the websites, the apps, all number of other companies. If you're looking at sort of other sports aggregation sites and things, you'll get the feeds on there. And all of those organizations, they want the data now. They don't want it in a few minutes. They want it as soon as the point is won. So that's why we have to make sure that we're not just watching from afar somewhere. We are there on the court, always recording exactly what happens. Speed to serve, we've been doing speed to serve for quite a long time as well. This is managed by sort of radar guns that are on both ends of the court, or sometimes in various positions depending on where the court is, and other RF interference and things. So trying to manage all that's quite an interesting problem. But yeah, you'll have seen the IBM speed of serve display on the edge of the court, on centre court, for a very long time now, and that's something that you only get on the show courts because we've got the sort of the size and space to be able to run that. And yeah, it's quite cool, although sometimes you have to be very aware of matches that don't have regular speed of serves. For instance, if it's an invitational doubles match where you've got a couple of players like Brahmi who like to play with chairs, or they like to put 3 players on one side of the court and a member of the public on the other, that tends to make things like speed of serve a little bit odd, so we tend to not display that on those matches because it doesn't make much sense anyway. This is what some of our rooms look like. So we're based in what we call the bunker, which is sort of in the sub-basement of the broadcast centre. The big one on the side here is our what we call the .com team, but they actually manage the whole of Wimbledon.com and all of the apps for Android and iPhone. So again, making sure that the score feeds go out to those nice and smoothly. Updates go out to people, but not just that, ticketing, feeds for the media, for press, all kinds of stuff goes out of Wimbledon, all the sort of creative, the blog posts, the videos, all that sort of managed out of here. We've got our data insights team who are constantly looking through the data, querying it, coming up with interesting reports to try and find cool patterns or stories about maybe a player's journey through the championships, so that when you've got, say, John McEnroe sitting in a commentary box sounding really, so you've got this great story they can talk about, it's because we might have found it for them, and we've provided them with sort of the series of interesting stats to go through. And you can't always do that just with AI. You need people who've got sort of that creative brain to go and sort of find a problem and sort of track it down, which is quite cool. And you can see here, it's a bit blurry, but that's our team who monitor all the TV graphics. So if you see the score bug on the top or the lower third showing you the sort of a summary of stats about matches, all of that again is being generated out of this basement in the broadcast centre from these score feeds. We've got the websites. 5 minutes is cool. We've got the websites on every kind of device. That's a very old iPad, but don't worry about that. This is sort of a very high-level overview of all the stuff that happens on Wimbledon.com that you would see. So we've got the scores, the news, any information. It's going through a whole number of different systems. Some of it, if it's just standard content, it goes through CMS to go onto the website. If it's scores and stuff, it goes through all of our cognitive systems, sort of try and find interesting stats of things, or do our AI commentary and stuff like that. It goes to broadcast, also on sites, all of the screens around the site, and media and anyone else who's interested, including the players' coaches. The website started in 1995. Looks very different now, but you know that was where we started, and it's come a long way. But then so is the rest of the internet, so it's all good. We're also in video games. So Wimbledon have a partnership with Roblox and Fortnite, and again we drive a score feed to these video games. So if you're in the Roblox Wimbledon world, you can actually go and see what's happening on centre court if you wanted to, as well as doing all the other fun stuff that's in there. AI commentary. Here we go. We are monitoring video feeds for all the matches, starting to pick out interesting stuff. We can do, you know, just standard AI vision stuff, but all of that is starting to drive the generation of AI commentary, which we're using, which is very important for our outside courts. Not every court has a commentator.
Peniston plays Murray on the esteemed centre court in the first round.
In this case, centre court does, but this is just an example. You might have a court 10, court 11, where there's no commentators. They don't do commentary on those courts, but you might have people interested in what's going on, and you might have people who are visually impaired. You still want to provide a rich, interesting narrative for them to follow, and this is exactly how we're sort of trying to start doing it. This is an experiment for last year.
Into making the backhand error and wins the first set.
It's fairly sort of simple at the start, but we want to make sure it's accurate and it's straightforward. You don't want any extra sort of colour right now. You just want to know what's happening on those courts. And so this is what we're starting to play with some of those data feeds. Ticketing. Ticketing is also a huge thing that's moved to the web in recent years. If you ever bought a ticket for Wimbledon a few years ago, you'll have known it was you send off an envelope, and you might get that envelope back with the opportunity to then buy a ticket through the ballot, and it was quite a sort of a long manual process. This has all been added to online now, so now you go through the online ballot through Wimbledon.com. It's a really, really complicated thing to do online ticketing and balloting, but every year it gets better, and we sort of, you know, you find all the interesting sort of challenges that come with it, and, you know, user experience and people, how different people expect to get their tickets. It's always good. So that's a big thing that's been happening over the last couple of years for us as well. But I just want to sort of go back and show where we've been. So, I mean, you know, we've got the great LED displays now, but it used to be flip-dot displays, which I think technically I prefer flip-dot displays, but that's just probably for here. It used to be people with a sign that they flipped over. There were people sat next to the court doing manual scoring in front of all the players and the people there to watch it. This was the IBM operation, I believe, in 1990-something. This was us in a shipping container out the back of where the broadcast centre is now. It didn't used to be there. But again, it was we took up a lot more space. Those can be laptops now or even in the cloud. But that was what we were working with one tiny air conditioning unit. I have to say I wasn't there at the time. These were the old BBC OB trucks. This is just from our photo archive. I just thought I'd show you. It's quite cool. And those are what you see around the top. They're commentary boxes for, I think that was number 1 or centre court. So all of this was temporary structures just built for the event. Of course, now they have a whole proper number one court and centre court for these kinds of things. And this was the old Wimbledon information system. Again, it's all on the web now. But yeah, it's sort of, we have been there for 34 years. We have been doing stuff, and we're still doing more as we go. And then finally, just a very quick one, honourable mention. He's not technology, but he does play a very important purpose. Rufus the Hawk keeps the pigeons away from the tennis courts just by having a flight around every morning. He flies around, the pigeons go, oh no, there's a hawk here, I'm not going to lay a nest or anything, and it means we don't have any birds. So that was a very fast 30 minutes of all the tech at Wimbledon. Thank you very much.